There is one experience every single person who has ever lived will go through. Kings and strangers, the famous and the forgotten, you, me, everyone we love, and it is the one experience not a single one of them has ever been able to describe: death. We spend our whole lives not thinking about it, and when we do imagine it, most of us picture the same thing: a switch. One moment you're here, aware, alive, the next moment, nothing. Pure blackness, like a light clicking off and then off forever. But here's what almost nobody realizes: that picture, the sudden switch into nothing, is probably wrong. Because in the last few years, science has started very carefully to look at what actually happens inside a human being in the final moments, in dying brains, in the seconds after the heart stops, and what they're finding is stranger, and in a quiet way, far more beautiful than the light simply going out. Because death, it turns out, is not a moment, it's a process. And in that process, your brain may do something extraordinary one last time. So let's ask the question we spend our lives avoiding, gently and honestly: what actually happens in the moment you die? Let's start with the biggest misunderstanding of all. We think of death as a single instant, a line you cross, 1 second alive, the next second gone. But biology doesn't work like a switch, it works like a sunset. When doctors talk about death, they actually mean two different things. The first is clinical death. That's the moment your heart stops beating and your breathing stops. For most of history, that was the definition of the end: heart stops, person gone. But your cells didn't get the message. Because the second kind of death, real, final biological death, is when the cells of your body actually run out of oxygen and shut down for good. And that doesn't happen in an instant. It happens slowly, over minutes, and in some tissues, even hours. Your heart can stop, and for a little while, you, the deepest part of you, are technically still there, fading. But this is exactly why people can be brought back. Someone's heart stops, their breathing halts. By the old definition, they have died, and then CPR restarts the heart and they return, often with no lasting damage. They crossed into clinical death and came back, which tells us something important. The heart stopping is not the ending, it's the beginning of a countdown. So, what happens during that countdown? What is the brain doing in those final seconds when the heart has gone quiet but the mind has not yet faded? For a long time, we assumed the answer was simple: nothing. We assumed that once the blood stopped flowing, the brain just went dark, quietly and instantly. But then, a scientist named Jimo Borjigin at the University of Michigan decided to actually look. In 2013. Her team was studying rats, and they recorded what happened in the animals' brains at the exact moment their heart stopped. They expected to see the brain go silent. Instead, they saw the opposite. For about 30 seconds after the heart stopped, the dying brain lit up, not with random noise, but with a surge of highly organized activity called gamma waves. Gamma waves are the fastest kind of brain activity we know of, and here's the part that stunned everyone. They are strongly linked to consciousness, to focus, to vivid awareness. In other words, at the moment of death, the brain wasn't fading out, it was flaring up. In some ways, it looked more awake, more conscious than a normal waking brain. But rats aren't people. So the obvious, haunting question was, does the same thing happen in us? In 2022, we got our first accidental glimpse. An 87-year-old patient was having his brain monitored with an EEG for a medical reason when, unexpectedly, he had a heart attack and passed away right there while the machine was still recording. It was the first time in history a human brain had ever been captured by accident, in the very act of dying, and a neuroscientist named Ajmal Zimar analyzed those final moments. What did they find? A surge of gamma waves, the same fast, organized, conscious linked rhythm. And crucially, this pattern is the same kind of brain activity that fires when we recall memories and when we dream. Then, in 2023, Borjigin's team went further. They studied 4 people who died in the hospital while their brains were being monitored, and in 2 of them, as they passed, the same thing appeared: powerful surge of gamma activity. And it was concentrated in a very specific region of the brain, a zone that handles vision, hearing, and our sense of where our body is in space. The exact region you might expect to light up if someone were seeing, hearing, and feeling something intensely real. Now, we have to be careful and honest here, because science is honest. We cannot yet ask those patients what they experienced. We don't know for certain that this surge means the person is aware. But think about what it might explain. For thousands of years across every culture on Earth, people who came close to death and returned have described the same handful of things: a feeling of deep peace, a sense of leaving the body and looking down. Memories, sometimes an entire life, replaying in vivid detail, what we casually call your life flashing before your eyes. We always treated that as a story, a comforting myth, but what if it isn't a myth at all? What if it's biology? What if that final surge in the memory centers and the vision centers of the brain is the physical event behind the oldest story humans tell about dying? A doctor named Sam Parnia has spent his career studying this. He researches what happens to awareness during cardiac arrest, in the strange window when a person is clinically dead but can still be revived. And in his studies, some patients who were brought back reported being aware, having thoughts, even perceiving things around them, during a time when medically they were gone. The brain, in its final chapter, may be doing far more than we ever gave it credit for. And there's one more discovery in all of this. Maybe the most tender one. Researchers wanted to know which of our senses is the last to leave us. When someone is slipping away, what's the final door to close? And the evidence points to something unexpected. Not sight, not touch. Hearing. Studies of people in their final hours suggest that hearing is very likely the last sense to fade. The dying brain keeps responding to sound, to voices, even after the person can no longer respond back, even after they appear to be gone. Sit with what that means for a moment. It means that when families gather around someone in their final hours and speak to them, tell them they love them, tell them it's okay to let go, those words may genuinely be reaching them. To the very end, the last thing a human being may ever experience is not darkness or fear or pain. It might simply be the sound of a familiar voice. So let's put the whole picture together, because it looks nothing like the switch we imagined. The heart stops, but you are not instantly gone. A countdown begins, and in those final seconds, instead of going dark, the brain may erupt into the most organized, most vivid activity it has ever produced. A flood of gamma waves in the very regions tied to memory, to vision, to your sense of self. Perhaps replaying your life, perhaps flooding you with a piece we don't yet understand, and through all of it, hearing lingers the last thread connecting you to the people who love you. That is a very, very different thing from a light clicking off into nothing. Now, an honest word, because this deserves honesty. Science cannot tell you what any of this feels like. It cannot tell you what comes after or whether anything does. Those are questions that belong to faith and philosophy and to each person's own heart, and no brain scan will ever settle them. Anyone who claims certainty about what lies beyond is selling you something. But what the science can do is quietly change the shape of the fear because we have spent our whole lives dreading death as a sudden, cold nothing, a wall of black. And the evidence, as far as it goes, hints at something gentler, that the final act of the human brain may not be an ending in darkness at all. It may be a surge, a last brilliant flare of the most human thing we have. Memory, awareness, meaning firing all at once, like the sky lighting up the moment before the sun disappears, not a switch, a sunset. We began by picturing death as a light going out, but maybe that was always the wrong image. Maybe in your final moment, the light doesn't go out at all. Maybe it's the brightest it will ever be. And whatever comes after that, if anything comes at all, that final flare belongs entirely to you. The one experience no one can describe, but the one, in the end, that every one of us gets to have because everything has a why, even the moment we spend our whole lives afraid of. And now, as much as anyone can, you know it. Before you go, one small thing. Videos like this take a lot of digging. Real studies, real scientists, real research handled with care. Not just guesses, and I bring it all together so you don't have to. So if this made the world, and even the end of it, a little less frightening, the like button and the subscribe button are right there. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel more than you know. And this whole channel runs on one question: why? So tell me in the comments what's the next why you want answered. Why do we dream? Why do we cry? Why do we cry? Why do we fear the dark? Whatever it is, drop it below. The best one might just become the next video because everything has a why. And I'll see you in the next one. Now tell me, which why should we pull apart next? Drop your question in the comments. And if you like finding the hidden reason behind everyday things, subscribe to the Why Factor.